Okay then, before I start today's quick play setup guide for Windows PC, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content on my channel, Just Jamie. That just means you'll never miss a retro setup guide just like this one you're watching today, and it also helps my channel out too. So firstly, apologise for the last couple of days, I've not uploaded anything, I've had my own goings on in life, but I'm back now and we're going to do quick play. So what is quick play? Quick play apparently is one of the quickest loading systems out there, and it's a multi-emulator system. So let's actually start off by downloading quick play itself. So links are going to be in my description for everything I'm covering today. Here's Quick Play. We're going to go here to download the latest release of Quick Play, and you can download this from SourceForge. Now, if you're not familiar with SourceForge, a lot of emulators are uploaded to this website and it's perfectly safe. I've already downloaded this. Next up, what I'm going to do is download a Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis emulator. So we got Kega Fusion just here, and the version I've downloaded is for Windows just here, and this is version 3.64. So next up, going to download another emulator, and of course this is Snes9X, probably one of the best Super Nintendo emulators out there. And the version I've downloaded for this one today is the Snes9X 1.53 for Windows 32-bit and 64-bit. So what I'm going to do next then is head over to the desktop. I have got Quick Play just here, and once you've downloaded Quick Play, you'll download a zip folder. What we're going to do is just unpack this. So just double left click on that zip folder and you can just simply drag it out onto your desktop. This one can take around a minute to extract. Okay, so once we finish extracting Quick Play, what we're going to do is just delete that Quick Play zip folder. We no longer need this one. Now we've got Quick Play extracted. Inside you're going to find several folders and some .png images, and we've also got the Quick Play executable itself. So we also need to add these emulators, which means we need to set up the emulators separately, because remember, Quick Play is just a very simple way to open up your games. So what we're going to do first of all is take a look at the Fusion Sega Mega Drive emulator. If I double left click on this, I'm going to make a separate folder for this one on my desktop. Right click, new folder, and I'm just going to call this folder Fusion. And I'm then going to extract the contents into that Fusion folder. And again, I'm going to delete the Fusion archive, which I've just downloaded, so things don't get too confusing. And I've also got the Snes9X Emulator. So again, I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop and just call this one Snes9X. I'm then going to do exactly the same, just extract the contents and pop them into that Snes9X folder. Very simple stuff for now. So what we're going to do is finally delete the Snes9X zip folder. We no longer need this one. Next thing I'm going to suggest doing is within your Quick Play folder, create a new folder inside. So right click, new folder, and simply call this folder Emulators. And within that Emulators folder, I'm then going to drag and drop the Snes9X emulator and also the Fusion emulator inside, so everything's nice and neat, everything's together. Next up, what I'm going to do is within the Quick Play folder, I'm also going to create another folder. So again, right click, new folder, and I'm going to call this folder ROMs. And if I then go inside the ROMs folder, I'm going to drag my SNES folder containing some Super Nintendo games, and also drag my Mega Drive folder also containing some Mega Drive games. I'm going to drag and drop both of these folders inside of that Quick Play ROMs folder. Okay, so if we then back out, what we're going to do next is actually open up Quick Play itself. So if I double left click on the QP executable file and Windows protected your PC, go to more info, run anyway. Next up, we're literally going to press next on the welcome part. And from here, I'm actually going to bypass add an emulator section. I'm just going to go to next. And again, for add ROMs, I'm going to just go to next again. and exit. So I'll just bypass multi-emulator scan, that type of thing. Now personally, I find setting up emulators for use with Quickplay in the actual program itself a lot easier. I find that using its own feature for emulator scan, I find that some games, some emulators don't actually work. We can get this working, and once it is working, it works perfectly and it's very fast as well, hence why this is called Quickplay. So I'm going to go to File, Create New Folder, Add as New Root Folder. I'm going to press No on this, and New Folder, I'm going to call this Sega Mega Drive. And press OK. And here we go, we can now see Sega Mega Drive has appeared. What we're going to do next is just head up to Emulators and go to Emulator Management. And from here, on the left hand side, we're going to see lots of different systems. What we're looking for is Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. And here we go, Sega Genesis or 32X, which obviously the Sega Mega Drive and Sega Genesis supported as an add-on. What we're going to do from here is just go to Add. Now under name, I'm going to call this Fusion because that's the name of my Sega Mega Drive emulator. Under path, what I'm going to do is link this up to my Quickplay emulators folder. So I'm going to go to desktop where my Quickplay folder is located, QP for Quickplay, emulators. Here's my Fusion emulator folder, and here's my Fusion.exe, which opens up the Fusion emulator. If I double left click. Next up, we're going to just go one down and go to config file. Again, what I'm going to do is left click on the browser. And because we've not actually opened up the emulator itself yet, what we need to do is just cancel out of here. And I'm going to press OK for now. And we're going to open up the emulator outside of Quickplay. So we're going to go to Fusion. As you can see, this has now created a file. So we can now go back to Quickplay and we can finish this off. So emulators, emulator management, and we're going to just scroll down to find the Sega Mega Drive again. And here it is, Sega Genesis, here's Fusion, and we're going to go back to that config file and just browse again. And here we go, fusion.ini, double left click, and OK. So that's the emulator. So now we're going to need to add the games into Quickplay. So we're going to go to ROMs, scan for ROMs, and we're going to press on the plus button just here. And again, it's just a case of going to your QP folder. Here it is, and my ROMs folder. Here's my Mega Drive folder. OK. And system, I'm going to just drop this down or drop this up, and we're going to look for Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. Here we go, Sega Genesis. Emulator is going to be Fusion. And I'm going to just press scan. And here we go, it's now imported my Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis games into Quickplay. If I double left click on one of these games. And here we go, we're now in. Okay, excellent stuff. So we've now imported a Sega Mega Drive emulator and obviously scans for the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis games within Quickplay. However, we also need to configure the emulators themselves outside of Quickplay. Just remind yourselves that these are standalone emulators and you can actually configure the video settings, for example, or controller settings within Quickplay. You need to do this in the emulators themselves. So before I set up the next emulator in Quickplay, I'm actually going to very quickly configure the Snes9X. If I open up this emulator, here we go. So just like Fusion, this is going to open up in window mode. So the first thing I'm going to do for this is actually set up a controller. So I'm going to go to Input. I'm going to go to Input Configuration, and I'm using an Xbox controller for this. So it looks like it's already mapped. If it's not mapped, then we can literally, on this emulator in particular, just left click on one of these buttons here, and I'm going to then actually configure my controller. So I'm going to just do as it says, and it turns out my controller wasn't actually configured automatically. So if you plan on using this emulator, you will need to set this up just like I'm doing here. And so we're then going to go to OK. Okay, and we also need to configure this particular emulator, so once we run it through Quickplay, it's going to boot up your games in a full screen mode, rather than Fusion did just a minute ago and boot up into a window mode. So for this emulator, to do this, I'm going to go to Video, Display Configuration, and I'm going to check full screen. And of course, just like any other emulator, we got lots of video settings, but I'm not going to go into that because this video is just going to be showing you the very basics to get Quickplay up and running. So once full screen is checked, I'm going to go to OK. And if I then just exit out of this emulator, I'm going to press Escape on my keyboard, File, OK. So let's now go back to Quickplay and import the Snes9X Emulator, so qp.exe. Okay, so we now need to link this up. So what I'm going to do within Quickplay is just make sure I've got Quickplay highlighted. I'm then going to go up to File, New Folder, and Add as New Root. I'm going to press No again, and simply type in Super Nintendo. And press OK. And here we go. We now got Super Nintendo up here. We've got nothing in it yet, so we do need to add to this again. So Emulators, Emulator Management, and again we're going to look for this particular system, which is of course Nintendo. So we're going to find Super Nintendo, which is just here listed as Nintendo SNES. I'm going to go down to Add, and just here under Name I'm going to call this one Snes9X because that's the name of the emulator. Under Path, I'm then going to go to my Quickplay folder, and we're going to go into the Emulators folder. And here's my Snes9X folder, and I'm going to double left click on the executable file for the emulator, which is Snes9x.exe. And here we go. Next up, we got to also add the config file. So if I left click on this one and browse, I'm going to select the Snes9x.config, and that's now put into place. I'm then going to go to OK. And we've also got to add our games too for this system. So we're going to go to ROMs. We're going to go to Scan for ROMs. And folders to scan. So just like Mega Drive, I'm going to hit the plus button. And this time, under my ROMs folder, I'm going to select SNES. Press OK. System. I'm then going to look for Nintendo SNES or Super Nintendo. And here we go. Nintendo SNES. Emulator. I'm going to select Snes9X. And I'm simply going to press Scan. And here we go. As we can see, my Super Nintendo games have now appeared. And of course, we've also still got Sega Mega Drive. So we've got two systems. Now, technically, if I boot this up, we should go into full screen mode. So, for example, I'm going to double left click on Clock. Okay, so we've added two systems. We got Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. We've also added Super Nintendo, and just as Quickplay promised us, games open up particularly quick with Quickplay. So we can also customize how Quickplay looks. For example, if I go to Google Images and I'm randomly going to download a .gif image, let's just go for something like video games. If I right click on this image, save image as, I'm going to just edit this to make it a bit more readable. Wallpaper.gif. I'm then going to save this wallpaper.gif inside of the Quickplay images folder. If I go to save, and if we then go back to Quickplay, I'm going to go to Utilities, Appearance Options, and what I'm going to do next is go to List Settings, and I'm then going to go down to Folders List, and I'm going to make sure Use Image for Background is checked. If I go to Path, I can then link up what I've just downloaded as the background. For example, here it is, wallpaper.gif, and OK. And as you can see, we've now got image in the background. So it's not a great image, but if you have a good look through Google Images or whichever search engine you use, you'll likely find something really nice to go in the background. But I'm just showing you this as an example. And if we also go to Utilities, Appearance Options, we can actually change how the layout is. For example, vertical, OK. And here we go. So the layout is now changed. And again, Utilities, Appearance Options, if we go to List Settings, we can actually change the color of the background. If I go down to blue, OK, and as you can see, this is now changed appearance too. Utilities, Appearance Options, List Settings. In fact, let's go back to normal layout. List Settings, I can then also change the color of the font too. So if I go to Style, and I'm going to select a different font for this. Let's go for Century Gothic. I'm going to put this in bold, and I want the size of my font is, say, a size 12. I'm then going to go to Color, and I'm going to make this a white color. If I then go to OK, and OK, next you can see everything is now changed. So the font size has changed, the font style has changed, and it's in bold. Okay, other things we can do to spruce up how this looks is actually give our systems little icons. So to do this, we're just going to right click on the system, folder options, and once this is open, we can go over to use icon for folder tree icon. So for this example, I'm going to look for Super Nintendo. So if I just drop this down, and here we go, Super NES, and we also got Super NES 2. So there's a few different icons we can use just there for example. So I'm going to select supernes.ico, and if I then go to OK, and here we go, we now got a little icon next to Super Nintendo. And again, we can do this for, say, Sega Mega Drive. So again, just right click on the system, folder options, use icon for folder tree icon, and again just a case of dropping this down and looking for the image which matches that system. So this, for example, is going to be under Sega Mega Drive or even Sega Genesis. There's a lot of different images here to use, and here we go. So for Genesis, I'm going to select Genesis Mega Drive.ico, OK, and there we go, we now got a picture or a little image of the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. And we can also actually customize the backgrounds of each system. So as we can see right now, if we take a look in this window just here for Super Nintendo, it's blank, and same for Sega Mega Drive. If I then right click on the system's name, so Super Nintendo, folder options, I can then go to background image, and if I just browse for an image, I'm going to look for an image that I want to use in this. So for example, Super Nintendo, I'm going to put something Super Nintendo related. We're going to go for, say, Chun-Li. And if I just make sure use image for folder background is checked, I can then go to OK. And there we go. So obviously our font isn't too visible right now. So remember, we can change this by going to Utilities, Appearance Options, List Settings, and all I need to do then is just change the color of my font. So if I go to change, I'm going to put it back to black, and OK again, and here we go. It's a little bit more visible now. And again, we can do this with Sega Mega Drive. So you might want to go out your way and do a Google search for different images, but in this case, we're just going to show you how to do this. So again, for Sega Mega Drive, folder options, and if I then go to use image for a folder background, again, open that up, and this time, just going to find some Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis related. And here we go. So we're just going to use that genesis.gif, and again, press OK. And here we go. So they're not the best quality images around, but like I said, if you really want to make this look good, then Google is your friend. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, can we actually add artwork to our games, such as box artwork, screenshot artwork? Yes, we can. So what we need to do this is actually go to the Quickplay directory, and you'll find an images folder in here. What I'm going to do for this is create a new folder in here, and I'm going to call it exactly how Quickplay spells it. So for example, Nintendo SNES. And within that Nintendo SNES folder, I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this folder Box. Okay, so what we're going to do next is open up Quickplay itself. and I'm going to click on Super Nintendo just here. Now, as we can see, we've got no artwork at all, nothing displays. And if I go to the box tab, which you won't see first time round until you set this up, you also see nothing because we've not set up the directories and we've not actually got any images either. So what we're going to do is head over to Google, and from Google Images you can type in something like Plop, for example, and I'm going to just do a quick search for a JPEG image. Now let me just remind you that .pngs will also work for this. So if I right click on this image, save image as, here we go, ploc.png. Now what we need to do is actually match these images up to exactly how the game files are spelled, or the ROM files. So what I'm going to do for now is just call this ploc.png and just save it to my desktop for now. Now, if we go over into the Quickplay folder, and if we go into the ROMs folder, into my SNES folder, we're going to see just there, ploc is just named ploc.zip. And the image I've just downloaded, I've renamed it so exactly the same. So I'm going to go back into that images folder, into the Nintendo SNES folder, into my box folder, and just drag and drop that inside. Now what I need to do next is go back into Quickplay and just go up to utilities. I'm going to go down to media panel options, and what I'm going to do first of all is just make sure automatically move through tabs is actually unchecked. And over on the default folder image, I'm also going to make sure system image based on ROMs is checked rather than Quickplay logo. I'm then going to go down to add tab for emulators with media settings, just going to check that. Next thing I'm going to do is go over to path configuration, and from systems I'm going to drop down until I find Nintendo SNES. Here's Nintendo SNES, and what we're going to do is just left click for this example on box. As you can see, I've got the directory already set up. If I just delete this, what I'm going to do is show you how to link this up. So under box, once box is checked, I'm going to go down to media paths and click on the browse folder. I then need to go into my Quickplay folder, and I'm going to go to images, and then this will drop down to Nintendo SNES, and I'm going to use my box folder where I've just put my ploc image. If I press OK, what I'm going to do next is make sure tab type is actually set to images slideshow, and under search criteria I'm going to make sure file name must include ROM file name. I'm then going to go down to OK, and if I click on my ploc game, here we go, we now have ploc set up, and I can do this again with, say, Super Metroid. So if I go back over to Google Images and just type in Super Metroid, and let's grab a copy of the front cover of this, and this one's in JPEG also. And again, I need to make sure the images are spelled just as the game files themselves. So Super Metroid, and what I'm going to do with this is actually send this directly into my Quickplay folder and into my images folder, Super Nintendo box, and just save that in there. Now if I go back over to Quickplay, I can now see that Super Nintendo image. So just remember that some images you download might look a little bit distorted like this one does. So make sure you look for better resolution images. And let me just remind you, you do have dedicated websites out there to actually download media packs for retro gaming systems. Just check out Google and you can find things like Screen Scraper and the Games Database. There's a variety of different websites out there to do this. Now, if you don't see the artwork, just remember at the top, we got tabs just here. So if I go to Snes9X, we don't have any artwork. If I swap over the box and go through my games, here we go. Now, it's not just box we can actually use, but we can actually set up a directory of, for example, screenshots of the gameplay. So what we need to do in order to do this is go back into that images folder, Nintendo SNES, just go back into there. Here's our box folder. This time I'm going to create a new folder and simply call this one Screenshots. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to Plock, and as we can see, we got nothing at the top just there. We've got no tab which says Screenshots. First of all, I'm going to go back over to Google and I'm going to just type in Plock SNES. If I go to Images, then I'm going to look for a JPEG or a .png, which seems to work well. So save image as, and I'm going to save this again as Plock. And I'm going to save that directly into the Quickplay folder and into the Images folder and Nintendo SNES and into the Screenshots folder this time. Save. Okay, so that's now been saved into the new Screenshots folder. So what we need to do next is go to Utilities, Media Panel Options, Path Configuration, and then I'm going to look under Systems again for Nintendo SNES. Here's Nintendo SNES. This time I'm going to go down to Screenshots. I'm going to check Screenshots, and Media Paths is obviously wrong because this is pointing it to a different folder entirely. I'm going to just delete that. Open up the browser, and this time I'm going to point it to the Screenshots folder. OK, and OK. Now if we take a look at the top, we can now see Screenshots, and here's a screenshot of Plock. Very awesome stuff. And as you can see, if I go through each one, all we've got is Plock. So let's actually put another screenshot image into place. Let's go for Super Metroid. So if I go back over to Google, Super Metroid, and just randomly use this one, save image as, and just remember these do need to be called exactly how they're spelt within the game file itself. So again, just a case of going to QP, Quickplay folder, down to Images, Nintendo SNES, Screenshots, and save it. Go back to Quickplay. You know, if you fancy this being a little bit more dynamic, we can actually change our games to skip through different pieces of artwork. Let me show you. If we go up to Utilities, down to Media Panel Options, if we this time check automatically move through tabs, and I'm going to just drop this down to say 5 seconds. OK, and this should then skip to the next piece of artwork. Okay, so as we could see just a minute ago when I was adding different pieces of artwork into Quickplay, you might consider adding your own custom tab. Let me show you how to do this and show you what I mean. If we go back to Quickplay, let's just go to Super Nintendo again. If we go to Utilities, Media Panel Options, Path Configuration, and of course we need to look for that particular system that we're going to be working on, Nintendo SNES. And from here, we can actually create a new tab. So to do this, let's just go to the plus at the top, Caption. So what I'm going to do is just randomly call this Box 3D. And under default type, I can then select thumbnails or image slideshow. And if I press OK, as we can see at the bottom just here, we have now got Box 3D appear. And from here, it's just literally a case of then setting up a folder within that Images folder and Quickplay directory and linking it up just as you would with what we've already done with Screenshots and Box. It really is that simple. Okay, so throughout this video, I've actually been using my page up and page down in order to move through the games like I'm doing right now, but we can actually set this up to read from a joystick, or rather a controller. So to do this, if I go up to Utilities at the top and go down to General Options, from here, if I just check joystick support and just make sure that one's checked, go to OK. And now if I use my Xbox controller, I can actually use my D-pad in order to scroll through my games, so we don't need to use the keyboard anymore. And of course, my A button, in this example, is actually going to boot the game. And here we go. And that's it for today's quick play setup guide for Windows PC. So as you can see throughout this video, I think this video could have went on for at least another half an hour, but I had to stop somewhere. It's very customizable, as you can see. And let me just tell you that if you want to do any further research onto this for something I've not covered, I think you might actually find it a little bit hard to find any information on this. It seems to me that many website links for quick play are actually dead, and it does seem that any help is actually in PDF and it's actually in foreign. I think it's French, so I couldn't actually translate that. I was also shocked to see on YouTube there's very little, or I couldn't see anything relating to this multi-emulator front-end system. So anyways, I did my best to set this up for you, and it's a very capable and actually does exactly what it says. It's very quick. So anyways, if you liked today's video, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content here on my channel, just Jamie. Also join me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. But until next time, stay retro.